Hi everyone, my name is Chermy Pagas, and now let's talk about corporation. What is corporation? A corporation is a legal entity that is separate from the parties who own it, the shareholders who invest by buying shares of stock. Corporations are governed by a board of directors elected by the shareholders. Um, in a corporation, the owners are called stockholders. They have limited liability for the action of the company, but they also have limited involvement in the day-to-day operations. This is one of the most complicated forms of business to run in terms of taxes, record keeping, accounting, and the general paperwork. Shareholders report the money they earn on their personal income tax returns, which lets them avoid the double taxation that happens with other business forms. These are the advantages of corporation. It's about separate legal entity. It is about independent from its owners and considered a legal entity that may conduct business, own properties, enter into binding contracts, borrow money, sue and be sued, and pay taxes. Next is about unlimited life. Stockholders, shareholders, or members are the owners of a corporation, and it is managed by a board of directors. Their death or inability to perform their duties does not affect the continuity of this legal entity. The only changes in the company's charter will enable it to either be extended or liquidated. Next is limited liability. Company owners are only liable for the amount they invested. Creditors and lenders have no claim to the owner's personal assets for payments owned by the shareholders. Next is easy transfer of ownership shares. Publicly held corporations do not require approval from other stockholders to sell the stocks or shares of individual owners. Stocks or shares can be easily traded in the market regardless of their volume. Next is competent management. Investors or owners may not directly handle day-to-day business operations, but they vote for the board of directors who eventually hire a professional management team. And the last advantage of this corporation is about source of capital. It's about a corporation can source funds from selling stocks and issuing bonds. Next is about disadvantages of corporation. Uh, it has incorporation cost. It is costlier to go through the process of incorporation than to perform a sole proprietorship or partnership. Next is about double taxation. Two taxes are remitted from the corporate earnings and from payments of dividends to shareholders. And last is about documentation. Aside from incorporation documents, companies must file annual reports and tax returns, as well as maintain accounting records, licenses, and other important documents. Next is, how do corporation work? A corporation is required to name a board of directors before it can commence operations. And the members of the board of directors are elected by shareholders during the annual general meeting. Each shareholder is entitled to one vote per share, and they are not required to take part in the day-to-day running of the corporation. However, shareholders are eligible to be elected as members of the board of directors or executive officers of the corporation. And then the board of directors comprises a group of individuals who are elected to represent shareholders. They are tasked with making decisions on major issues affecting the shareholders, and they also create policies to guide the management and daily operations of the corporation. The elected members to the board of directors owe a duty of care to the shareholders, and they must act in the best interest of the shareholders and the corporations. So, how does a corporation dissolve? The life of a corporate entity lasts until there is a change in its charter or the purpose of its existence has reached its peak. A process called liquidation will serve the transition facilitated by a liquidator. And then the corporate assets will be sold, and the proceeds will first to go to creditors to pay off debt. Whatever remains will be given to shareholders, and voluntary liquidation is usually triggered by creditors of an insolvent or bankrupt company. So thank you for listening about my discussion about corporations.